Yeah, and it's, the fact is, as you point out, we're on the eve of peace talks, literally on the eve of peace talks. Assad has the upper hand in these talks. He's almost, essentially, with his Russian and Iranian allies, wiped al-Qaeda and ISIS out of the country. So on the verge of this great victory that they've suffered for all these years, he decides, I think I'm going to go out and kill some people with gas. And if he just wanted to kill people, there are a heck of a lot better ways of doing it than using gas, which just guarantees that the entire world community, including your allies, are going to turn against you. As you say, he would have to be the most insane leader probably in the history of the world, a Caligula or something.
Well, the collusion of several groups, and we might throw pro-oil people in and pro-military industrial people that is in this effort to continue wars going on. But I think it's the same group of people we dealt with when we were trying to prevent, the remaking of the Middle East under Bush and his marching in to have regime change in Afghanistan and Iraq, and look at the results there. But they never learned from this, so they just shift gears, go to Libya. If it doesn't work, let's go over now, and maybe they consider they've had a tremendous success in Ukraine or something, but now it's Syria, and they're into it. But they're all coming together, and when you look up at what they do, is they do have to get some type of public support for the war. Although they're behind the scenes, the neocons and the deep state, they're making the plans, they rule the day, but they still know that they have to use their propaganda machine to get the people behind them.
This president reacted to events which were so horrific that it required American reaction, and I believe that not only was the act itself important, but the signal that it sent to the world from President Trump was as important.
Joining me now is Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. He is a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Do you agree with what Senator McCain said?
Well, I think when you look at whether we go to war or not, it's one of the most important questions that any legislator will ever address. But I think it's ironic that this week we confirmed Neil Gorsuch, an originalist who believes in the original interpretation of the Constitution. But our founders in the original days believed that war should be declared by Congress. So I think before you even get into the debate of whether we should or shouldn't, we should start out with the law. And the law says that the president does not have the power to declare war, does not have the power to take us to war. And so I think that's the real problem with this issue. We didn't have the debate, we just simply went to war.
As we were speaking right now, we were getting the first images after the impacts from U.S. missiles that rained down on a Syrian airbase, which we're finding out that in fact Russian personnel were at that base. From the Prime Minister of Russia, Medvedev, was that U.S. missiles came within an inch of clashing with Russian forces last night. Of course, creating an unwise situation, bringing us to the brink of a full all-out world war between Russia and the United States. On the heels of the U.S. airstrikes, the Russians are suspending an agreement that prevents direct conflict with American forces, suspending a 2005 deal with the United States aimed at avoiding mid-air collisions in Syria. The Russians are saying now the risk of such a collision couldn't be any higher, and therefore explaining their suspension of this deal. Russia at the same time is upgrading its Syrian air defenses. The Russian S-400 missile defense shield has been put in combat readiness, as Russian warships have been armed and sent towards the direction of the U.S. destroyers that launched last night's Syrian airstrikes. Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that the Syrian strikes last night have crippled U.S.-Russian relations, and the Russian Prime Minister told Trump that he is one step away from a complete war with Russia. Now, in the American mainstream media, we are getting one side of this conflict, one story from the U.S. administration, from the deep state that works with the mainstream media, telling everyone that this was a justification for the chemical weapons attack that the Syrian government committed against its own people, justifying this conflict. But the Russians have a completely other side of this story that you deserve to hear. They are saying that the U.S. justification is completely untrue, saying that the scenario of the Syrian government using chemical warfare is highly implausible, and pointing the fingers at Syrian rebels, which brings into question who really used chemical weapons inside of Syria. The argument that the Russians are using was that Syrian rebels did have chemical weapons, and when the Syrian government was flying airstrikes, it hit one of the depots that held these chemical weapons, therefore exploding them and releasing the chemical weapons that the rebels had. Blaming this entire incident on a mishap, saying that the Syrian government did not use chemical weapons against its own people. And to me, that argument is plausible since we found out in 2013 that the chemical weapons that were used in Syria before were used by the Syrian rebel groups. Even UN officials came out after investigating the initial 2013 Syrian chemical weapons incident, which by in fact Barack Obama tried to use as a justification to launch a bombing campaign against the Syrian government, but couldn't. And in that incident, a lot of the evidence pointed to the rebels being the ones who actually used chemical weapons, leaving many people to say that the Syrian gas attack was an Al-Qaeda false flag, and that Trump should have waited, investigated, found out exactly what happened, and not bombed the Syrian government, but should have gone after ISIS and Al-Qaeda. The Russians are even going as far as to blaming Donald Trump for planning missile strikes before the chemical attack. Putin's spokesperson Dmitry Peskov dismissed Trump's explanation for the attack, stating that Donald Trump was simply looking for an excuse to jump into the conflict. We're also finding out that one of the doctors who was a key witness to this latest chemical attack was actually put on trial for terrorism in the United Kingdom. And this is the man who provided evidence of this gas attack, who is now being treated as a committed jihadist by the UK government. But after all this, the United States military is not backing down, as they are looking into whether Russia participated in a Syrian chemical weapons attack, shifting the blame away from them and starting more heated rhetoric towards Russia. And after yesterday's attack, we are seeing the battle lines drawn as Donald Trump has aligned himself with neoconservatives, the mainstream media, Hillary Clinton, Saudi Arabia, Israel, ISIS, Turkey, and Al-Qaeda, while at the same time facing off and making enemies out of Syria, Iran, Yemen, Russia, China, Shia Muslims fighting terrorists, and real alternative media. The lines have been drawn. This conflict is escalating. Many people are saying that this will lead to an entire world war between these two super global world powers who are involved in a proxy war officially, have been under Barack Obama, and now escalating that under President Trump, which is making everyone fear the worst. But to be honest, from my expertise and investigating this for a number of years now, what this ultimately will lead to is a very tense standoff between Russia and the United States, since both countries understand if there was a head-to-head conflict between these two nations, it would mean nuclear holocaust for the entire world. Russia's foreign policy is extremely unpredictable, and Donald Trump is playing a game that is very dangerous, that won't be solved anytime soon, and from what I see, create more proxy wars all over the world. For more news and analysis, don't forget to go to wearechange.org and support us on wearechange.org/donate. We are a news organization funded by you, the viewers, and even $1 means the world to us, especially during these key critical times, so we could be here for you reporting the news that no one else will. Thank you again so much for watching. Subscribe, stay tuned.